It's been really interesting doing this making do project. I mean, I've had an amazing response to it, actually. I'm really surprised, both on here and on my MySpace page and on my own webpage. So I've decided I really am going to keep it up for the whole year. I'm going to make do, not buy anything new for a whole year. One of the things that really inspired me to keep going is I've just been to a meeting which was just off Kensington High Street in London. Now, for those of you not familiar with old London town, Kensington High Street is, I reckon, a fairly upmarket shopping street in the centre of London. A lot of posh shops.
Did you know that the term posh is a term that comes from Britain's colonial past? It's quite fascinating. In those far-gone days, the more wealthy passengers on board these steamers that set sail from this small island that ruled the world at that time would choose which side of the ship they had their cabin on, and they would always plumb for the shady side of the ship as the ship sailed through tropical waters with the searing sun. They didn't want to get cooked, so they stayed on the port side of the ship on their journey to India or one of the other colonies, and the starboard side of the ship on the way home on the return journey. Thus, the term was coined: port out, starboard home. P-O-S-H, posh. That's where it comes from. It's fascinating, isn't it?
So I looked in all these posh shop windows as I walked along Kensington High Street, and I was really relaxed, because the decision to make do for this year has removed all that kind of tension about consuming stuff. I'm just not interested. I've got no desire. I've also got this sneaking suspicion that it might be catching on in quite a big way. I mean, as I walked along the street looking at all the other people out there today, it's a bit of a grim day, it's been snowing, it's a bit damp and cold. They all looked so sombre and dark and miserable and depressed. I mean, it wasn't a happy sight, all the people, all the shoppers on Kensington High Street. They all looked grim. They all looked like they decided to make do as well. So scruffy. With, I think, one of the worst dressed nations on earth. Unbelievable scruff. Actually made me, in my slightly grubby old worn out trousers, my knackered shoes and my dirty old leather coat, made me feel quite posh. They all looked like that except for one businessman. A proper classical English businessman in a collar and tie, a pinstripe three-piece suit, and yellow Wellington boots.
Rubber galoshes, I think they're referred to in the former colonies. Rubber galoshes. Marvellous idea. Of course, the Wellington boot was originally invented by the Duke of Wellington, a large waterproof boot, originally made of leather, which protected the wearer's feet. It was later developed in the Victorian period when using rubber from the colonies. Fascinating, isn't it?
But I do think the notion that there's all these miserable, depressed-looking people walking along the street in this town at this time in history, when London has become this absolute magnet for billionaires, for the biggest bonuses in the banking industry that the world has ever seen. I mean, there's a guy in this country who got something like £105 million bonus on top of his huge wage already, just because he works in a merchant bank in the city. There's so much money in this town. I've never known anything like it. This is really the richest place on earth at the moment. We've just overtaken New York in the stock exchange, in the amount of money I don't even know what happens to the money. The amount of money that gushes through the pipes of the British economy. And the trickle-down effect, as people often refer to, the trickle-down effect to help the poorer people of the world, hasn't quite got there yet. I think the plumbing for very wealthy people is quite good. There's not a lot of drips. There's not a lot that leaks. So I think the irony of having a year of making do in this country this year, probably the wealthiest year that this country will ever experience in its history, is particularly ironic. I quite like the irony of that. Well, everybody else is going around buying. There's a flat for sale in London at the moment for £84 million. A flat, not a house, an apartment overlooking Hyde Park. It's a lovely place. Don't get me wrong, it's gorgeous. £84 million per flat. There's 4 of them. I think they've all been sold. So there's plenty of money here, and there's plenty of people spending plenty of money like mad. Sotheby's are choking on the money that's chundering into them with all the art sales they're doing. It is quite extraordinary, and I'm wandering around the streets not buying anything. I'm an idiot, aren't I? I must be. I mean, why would you do it? I don't want it. I don't want anything. That's the simple answer. In my year of making do, it's actually quite easy, because I just don't want any of this stuff. Even if I could afford an £84 million flat. And believe me, I really can't. That's quite funny, even the very notion of it. Anyway, that's all from me. I'll be back very soon.